If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And please join me on my website at nanice.com. Thank you.
It's your time for Chai with Nanice. Get ready for substance, clarity, change, and especially empowerment. Get ready to turn over stones, uncover stories, and get to the heart of the matter in every area of your life. Any mood runs, any emotion flies, and your dreams are within your grasp. There are no limits or boundaries, and your comfort zone is out of reach, yet it's the safest place you will ever be. Come in, sit down, and have some chai with Nanice.
Welcome to Chai with Nanice. I'm Nanice. Today we're talking about the story of your life. Yes, there is a story that is only your story. There has never been a story like yours before, and there never will be again. Having said that, maybe it's time that we all start creating stories that really support who we are and what we want to do in life. So today we're going to be talking about just that, how to create a story that supports you and your life. And before we begin, I'd like to tell you the story of the wizard. The story of the wizard goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a great and powerful wizard. He was a wizard of a mystical land who knew how to create all he desired through his thoughts, feelings, and intentions. One day he went on a walk through his beautiful forest. He experienced the splendid smell of exotic flowers, the playful sound of animals, the vast blueness of the eternal sky, and the luxurious moist grass beneath his bare feet. He was both intoxicated by the experience and amused by it, for he knew that he was the creator of all that is. He knew that he created the exotic flowers, the melodic birds, the eternal sky, and the wild grass below his bare feet. He knew that he created all that is simply with the magic of his mind, and so he rejoiced in his creations as he continued to walk. Well, in his intoxication, he fell and he hit his head. When he awoke just minutes later, he could not remember anything of his life before or of his magical powers. Suddenly, he was experiencing himself to be alone in a very scary forest. The birds sounded like wild hawks ready to attack, the sky looked ominous, and without shoes, he was subject to all sorts of dangers. Without remembering who he was, he experienced himself as frightened and powerless. Instead of acting fearless as the creator of all around him, he began to make up stories about himself and his life, just like all humans do who don't remember their own magic and power, who don't remember who they really are. These stories made him feel powerless and weak and vulnerable. Trying to make sense out of his experience, he told himself that someone must have beaten him up and dragged him to the forest to die. Why else would he have a huge painful bump on his head and be barefoot in this dangerous, dangerous forest? Maybe this person was watching him now and was ready to pounce on him at any moment. He could feel fear pulse through his whole body. He got up and began to move, but as he did, he heard wild animals in the forest, and he was certain that they wanted to kill him as well. He knew he had to defend himself as only a good warrior could, and so he made a spear. He would kill them first, and that is exactly what he did. He spent the rest of his life in the unforgiving forest, simply trying to survive by killing anything that seemed to pose a threat. He lived his entire life just trying to survive and never again enjoying the life that he himself could not remember creating. For years, the townspeople looked for him, but could not find him. He had learned to be a good warrior and hid well when he perceived himself to be hunted. One day, when he was dying, one of the townspeople stumbled across his weary body. The townsman almost didn't recognize the wizard because his appearance had changed so drastically. The townsman bent down to the wizard to offer him help, but the wizard just glared back with fear and distrust. The townsman tried to remind the wizard that he was the wizard and the creator of all that he experienced. Although the wizard felt something familiar, like in a dream, in the man's words, the wizard was caught up in 30 years of his own story to remember who he was. When the wizard died that day and awoke from his story in the afterlife, he clearly saw that in his ignorance to uncover the truth of who he was, he invented a convincing story about life. Once he created this story, he spent the rest of his life proving it was true. He laughed when he realized that even in his seeming powerlessness, he had still created all around him. He clearly saw that as his story became one of survival and fear, the forest actually changed to make his story true. The animals did in fact become vicious, the plants poisonous, and real dangers lurked at every turn. Whether the wizard remembered his powers or not, he was still creating everything around him. He was still a great, powerful spiritual being, whether he knew himself to be so or not. How does this apply to you? Well, it applies exactly to each and every one of us. You see, most of us are living in a state of amnesia and forgetting that we are also great, powerful wizards. That instead of reclaiming and honoring our power as the creators of our lives, we simply keep making stories up, and stories of powerlessness and fear. And as a result, creating a life that proves our stories true. The good news is, like the wizard, we are still creating everything around us. We're just not doing it consciously or with conscious intention. The truth is, you can't stop being the absolute creator of your life, that we are powerful creators. Unfortunately, when we're unconscious and we're not awake, as the wizard was in this story, we too create stories that prove that we're powerless, that exemplify our fear, that manifest our worry into everyday life. Well, today is the day that you get to wake up, that you get to remember who you really are, and that your amnesia is just a distant dream from the past, as you become the true, confident, and conscious creator of the life that you really want to create. If this sounds exciting, you are in for a great journey today. My beautiful guest is Maisie Vultaggio. Maisie is the COO and co-founder of the Lumai Company, which is an international management and employee training and development company. Maisie is also co-developer of the Business Vitalizer, I can't speak today, a management and business productivity software company, which has been designed to retrain your brain to provide improved performance and communication skills while enhancing morale and lowering stress levels at work. Maisie is also one of my amazing students in the Echo Coaching School Institute. And Maisie's business success has been complemented by her own involvement in 2 best-selling book series and appearance in the film titled VOW, which stands for The Voices of Women. She talks about the challenges and obstacles she faced in her life, from sexual abuse to nearly losing her life in a skiing accident, from family alcoholism to depression. Her life has been full of stories. Now Maisie is able to see how she attracted these difficult events into her life due to the beliefs that she held at that time. Once she was able to change her beliefs, the interpretations of her stories completely changed to the point where her stories actually changed. No longer did she see herself as a victim, but as a young woman attracting what could be seen as tragic events into her life in order to shake up her beliefs to reveal a strong and victorious woman underneath. Hi, Maisie. Welcome to Chai. Thanks for having Chai with me today.
Thank you so much, Nanice. This is an honor.
Thank you. My honor. My honor. So you have an amazing story, and I would love for you to briefly share this with our audience so they can know who you are and what you've been through. And I think there's a lot of power in that, because many times we get so caught up in our own stories that we think that they are so real and true, and we don't know how to get out of them. And I think when people hear others talk about their own stories that are equally as challenging, but also found a way out, that it becomes empowering for those who are still kind of trapped in the old stories. So I would love for you to share the story of your life as best as you can.
Best I can in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it all really started with the skiing accident. That kind of is an anchoring point for me, because at that point, I was an athlete, a very serious athlete. I was a swimmer, and I was a straight-A student, and the world was at my feet. And I decided to skip school, lie to my parents, and go skiing, which was completely against my character, but it was something I had chosen to do that day. And I ended up tumbling down the mountain at one point in time during the day. Other runs I had been going down smoothly all day long, and it just happened to be at the end of the day. The sun had now moved behind the mountain. It was slippery and icy, and I crashed. I bit it big time. And I people who were with me thought I was dead. I mean, I was barreling down that mountain so fast. And I remember hitting my head so hard on the ground that I thought I was going to bite my tongue off had it been in the way, because my jaw just was mangled, cracked teeth, dislocated jaw, popped inner ears. My whole inner vestibular system was crushed, which meant that I had no balance system. So I had no depth perception. I couldn't tell where my foot was in relationship to the ground. I couldn't reach for a glass of water without knocking it over. And so going from an athlete who was in the top of her game to now being bedridden, it really forced me. It's like God knew in order for me to start to really get my lessons, he had to completely take away everything in my life, my ability to read, my ability to have friends, my ability to be an athlete, and so forth. So once I was in a dark room, basically forced into meditation, I started having conversations with myself. Leading up to, though, that accident, I had spent the year before that in therapy because I had severe depression that had stemmed from several things in my life, but one of the main ones was the sexual abuse that I'd suffered when I was a child. So the year prior to my accident, I was trying to deal with major victimhood issues, and then attracting an abusive boyfriend into my life, putting me into a compromising position. So I had suffered this depression, but I really didn't see it as serving me as much as it did once I got into my injured state, because I was tapping into the power that was starting to awaken within me when I was depressed. And I started realizing that this can't be it for me. I have too much just life still in me, or else I would have died on that mountain, because my neck was just fractions of a way from being broken. I mean, it was twisted vertebrae, bulging discs, all this kind of complicated stuff in my whole upper body. And so I shouldn't have survived. So when you realize, okay, I'm still here, there has to be something more. So when I moved forward with my healing from my accident, I started realizing that I didn't necessarily have to be number one at anything anymore, that just being me started to be enough. I was developing friendships not based upon accomplishments. I was starting to realize that I didn't have to be number one in order to cheer other people on for being the best that they could be. So there's this kind of transformation all occurring within me when I was very young. I mean, I was 16, 17 years old when my life was waking up. But leading up into that, I was seen as powerless. Even though physically I was very powerful, I listened to what other people said. My happiness was based on what other people perceived as my success. I had sexual abuse in my life, so I had a tendency to let men rule my life. Even though my father was a phenomenal person, he traveled all the time. So I didn't have a very strong father role around to think that I had much to offer as a feminine person other than my body. And so my story growing up was one of powerlessness and victimhood, and that is how I saw my life. I did not see my life as successful unless somebody else told me I was successful. That was where I was. But once I had my accident, my depression, and then leading into my accident, I started realizing that it doesn't take success in order to be worthy of life.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, is there anything else you wanted me to say around that?
Yeah. Wow, you've gone through an amazing amount in your life, and I know that your story did not end there.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, and the piece that I think is just so priceless is how you reframed everything. Because a lot of people go through similar things as you did, and they stay stuck in them. They stay stuck in a victim mentality. They stick, this horrible thing happened to me. I was aiming to be a world-class athlete. I was, headed towards the Olympics. I had my whole future ahead of me, and then this awful thing happened. And there's a lot of people out there who stay stuck in that story, and they never get past it. And so the most fascinating, the most valuable part of your story is the fact that you changed it. That I'm sure at first there was a sense of that, like, why me? Why did this happen? It's a normal human reaction. But you obviously didn't stay there very long. And there was a part of you that started to seek out and search for yourself, it sounds like.
Oh, very much so.
How do you think that happened? Why do you think that happened?
It's interesting because I came into this life, and now I look back, I came into this life to learn a lot. I mean, it wasn't like one major thing just around unworthiness or just one thing around loss. I felt like I've moved through all four of the major beliefs, the limiting beliefs, because I've had depression, I've had abuse, I've had injuries, I've had then where I came back after I had my accident, and it was basically 2 years before I got better. I mean, I had a horrendous headache every day, and to try and even just function in life, it was very difficult for me to even just get out of bed. But if I could get out of bed, my aunt at the time was dealing with brain cancer, and she and I would have many of the similar types of tests because I had so much neurological damage. So she and I would go through these MRIs together. We'd go through these painful injections together. And so we kind of were hand in hand going through this. And she said, because she had 4 children, she said, hey, if I can get out of bed that day, I'm going to make it the best day possible. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking at this woman who has such phenomenal strength. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even have 4 children. Okay, if I can get out of bed today, I'm going to make it a great day. Right. And it took 2 years for me to really be able to feel that because I was suffering so much pain. Right. But the day that I woke up and I didn't have a headache, I still had I still have issues with my neck. But when I didn't wake up with a headache, it was like, oh my gosh. I mean, the veil had lifted for me. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this the best day ever. So yeah, my headache may have come now an hour later, but I started to see that I had the power to make it a great day, that it wasn't up to somebody else to tell me you need to go and do it. It was within me. Mm-hmm. So if I could get out of bed that day, I was going to go and, learn something new or spend time listening to someone else because I was a talker when I was little and I was younger and I talked all the time. I didn't listen very much. So what was my accident? My accident was around my jaw to where I couldn't speak. I mean, it was really powerful. Yeah. So I had to learn how to listen. Yes. Well, you don't realize the power you give other people when they feel heard. So I started to see that. I started to get that. I started to see that I could evoke, other people's power just by listening to them, which I never had the time to stop and listen to other people. I didn't have time to stop and smell the roses. I was so driven, number one. And
so the universe made you stop. The universe made me stop. Nothing short of, breaking your jaw will make you stop talking and finally listen. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah.
That's exactly right. Well, because after I had my skiing accident, 3 months later I was in a car accident that a car flipped over that I was in. And so it took away all my progress. And then 7 months later after that, I was hit on my bicycle and I stopped breathing and I had to be rushed to the emergency room. And so it was like every time I started making progress, but not the right kind of progress, the universe would come back and say, no, you're not getting it. I'm really sorry I have to do this to you. But here we go again.
It's kind of like that song by Amy Steinberg, Exactly. Yeah. It's like fate always brings you exactly where you're back to where you're meant to be. And I see this in my own life too. It's like we think we're supposed to go in one direction, but if that's not in our highest good, there is a divine intervention that happens. And sometimes it's really kind, and sometimes when we're not willing to listen, or we don't even know how to listen, or we don't know there's something to listen to, which sounds like that was in your case, the universe is really strong in showing us, where we're meant to be. And that, can be frightening, but to me that actually feels reassuring because I know that there's a higher power looking out for me. I know that, whatever it is that I chose to do in this life before I came here is somehow programmed in some energetic field. So even if I go to the right, I'm supposed to be going to the left, that the universe will conspire in her magical and miraculous ways and make me go in the direction that I've chosen, or that's in my highest good and the highest good of all. The other thing that I'm really hearing as you speak is that part of really finding yourself, recovering yourself, and I love that in this terms really, because you recovered yourself, is finding this a meaning, like what this must have meaning. And as you know, Maisie, I worked at a crisis center for about 7 years, and part of that was grief counseling. And there's many stages of grief counseling. And one stage I discovered that, you don't read about in the books, and that was finding meaning. And in fact, the people that had done the best in grieving and, moving past the grieving to get back to living their lives actively and consciously were the ones who found meaning. So you can grieve over, somebody who passes away, but you could also grieve over, a loss of a particular ability in your life, as in your case, and when we just keep going on why, very often when we keep asking why, we really don't know why. It's more like why me, and it keeps us in this cycle of being a victim. But when we shift that around and we let go of the story of poor me and we start saying, okay, there's a purpose in this, there's a meaning for this, and we start sorting for that meaning, I think that's where the empowerment happens. I think that's where we're able to even connect to ourselves and something greater than ourselves through connecting with ourselves and find the meaning. And so I'm hearing you say, I found lots of meaning, and that meaning was in, really quieting yourself, looking inside yourself rather than looking outside of yourself, listening to people. And, ultimately, you created a whole new life path, which, we've talked about this many times, and that has really supported you, and if you could share a little bit more about that, that would be just awesome for our listeners having chai with us today.
The turning within became big for me because I was forced into it. So prior to having my accident, I was a swimmer, so I had amazing breath control. So when I learned how to really focus on my breath, and a skill that I had acquired, that I didn't lose. So, you use what you've got in order to get where you need to go. Right. So the fact that I was a swimmer and I could focus on my breath and I could become very mindful of life, that then led into progressing into other avenues of my life. So I did eventually get to go back into swimming as a junior in college, and that was very, very exciting, but 2 months into my training, I fell and broke my arm. And so it's like, gosh, there has to be something here. Yes. There has to be something here, because I was getting back into training as good as I was 3 years prior to having my accident even. I mean, here I take 3 years off of training. I get right back in where I left off, which is very, very difficult to do as an athlete. So, but then I lost my ability to swim properly. So here I had to just kick and so forth. But when I came in on the pool deck every morning, I was just so excited to be there. I was just so excited to be a part of something. And so the coach turned to me and he said, I now get why I had you as a part of this team. You're the cheerleader. Like, everybody who comes in here grumpy at 5 a.m., don't want to get in the pool and train their hardest, they see you come in here just thrilled to be a part of it. And so you're inspiring them to be better, because they have the full ability to be the best that they can be, and you don't, and you're happier than they are. And so the thing that kept ringing into my head was inspiration. Yes. I just felt like I was part of what I needed to do here in this life is just inspire others, and understanding that you have a choice. It doesn't matter what's been taken away from you or what you feel has been lost. You still have a choice to go and make the life that you want. So did I ever get to be the number one swimmer I was on path to be? No. But what I did get to be was the best teammate, the best friend, the best daughter, the best now wife, the best mother that I can be, because I know how to do it. Because I know that it's not something that comes with accomplishment. It comes with just being with someone, listening to them, and expressing your love or excitement for what they're doing, or helping bring out their passion. And so that's part of what our business does. Our business goes into other businesses and helps bring out the purpose in what they're doing, helps them make sure they're in alignment with what they do for work. It helps them feel like they can make great communications with other people, that 70% of it is through listening. It is not through talking. I mean, this is now what I do for a living, and I'm affecting Fortune 500 companies. People are out there dragging themselves into work every day, and they see me at the front of the room, and I'm excited to be there. And they're like, how are you excited? It's like, because you get to make a choice. Right. I'm here to help you see that.
Right. Because it is a choice. And that's the entire point. And the choice happens in the mind. Nothing happens until we make a choice in the mind, and we can, walk into the same room and have a completely different experience based on choices that we make. And Maisie, I used to believe that depending on what we thought and what we expected, we had, we just noticed different things. But now I actually believe that the universe or the world around us or the room that we're in actually reorganizes itself to present to us exactly that which we're choosing inside of ourselves, that's which we are thinking, that which we are believing, the stories that we're telling ourselves. And when we come from this perspective, that means that all we have to do is change our beliefs, change our choices, change our stories to create a whole new life. And this is happening all around us. And it's pretty phenomenal. I remember years ago, and you probably have heard this story, so excuse me that you've heard it so many times before.
Okay. I know, it's okay.
and it's the story of Travis. So when he was my son Travis, he's just turned 15 on Saturday. Happy birthday, Travis! And when he was about, I guess he must have been about 7 years old, and his younger brother Clay was 5 years old, and honestly, they fought like just cats and dogs for many, many years. And at some point, I was hoping that they wouldn't kill each other. And now they're best of friends. And that actually is part of the story when you look at it in the entire picture. So he's about 7 years old, and I walked in to the room one day, and he's sitting there, and he's sobbing. He's just sobbing, Maisie. He's sobbing so hard I can't even, hear what he's saying. And I'm like, Travis, what's the matter? And finally I deciphered him saying that Clay took my toy. And Clay took my toy. And I looked down, and he had this toy in his hand, and I said, that toy? And he said, yes. Well, I immediately knew that he was upset about something that wasn't even happening anymore, that he was upset about something that did happen, because obviously he got his toy back. Never did ask how. I'm sure that's another story. So I decided to have a little fun. And we had been to Disneyland probably about the year before, and I suddenly talked about Disneyland. I said, Travis, remember we went to Disneyland, and we saw Mickey Mouse, and we went on this ride, and we ate this, and we did that, and immediately he started laughing. And then I reminded him that Clay took his toy, and I started sobbing again. And then I reminded him about Disneyland. He started laughing again. Then I reminded him about the toy, and he started crying again. And I went back and forth about 7 rounds of this, and all of a sudden he just stopped. No laughing, no crying. He just stopped, and he looked at me, and he said, I know what you're doing. And he did. He got it. He got the message. He realized that how he felt and his experience of his life had everything to do with the stories that he was telling himself. So fast forward a few years later, and he was having a bad day one day, and he came to me and he said, Mom, he goes, I know, I'm feeling bad just because of the stories that I'm telling myself, but I'm going to tell these stories a little bit longer, and when I'm done, I'll be done. And I said, that's great. I said, if you need any help, changing the story, let me know, or reframing the story. And he said, nope, I'm fine. And 20 minutes later, he was. Fast forward a few more years. So, as I mentioned, he and Clay did not get along very well. And since Travis was older and a lot more mature, I would sit down with Travis, and I would talk to Travis about, being responsible for the relationship, and that if he changed, the relationship would change. And, he pretended not to get it and would blame Clay. And, part of him also knew that it was a story that he was telling himself. Clay did this and Clay did that. Well, a few months ago, suddenly I noticed that they went from literally trying to kill each other every day to being the best of friends. And so I went to Travis, and I said, Travis, what happened? You and Clay, you're best friends now. And he laughed. He looked at me, and he laughed. And he says, I was waiting for someone to notice. He said, I simply made a different choice. He said, I was tired of the way that it was. I was tired of telling myself the story that Clay, did this and did that to me, and I was tired of all the fighting, and I just decided that I wanted to have a good relationship with him, and I knew all I had to do was change myself by changing my story about him. He never said anything to Clay. Nothing ever transpired directly with Clay. He just changed himself, and immediately, and permanently, everything changed. And not only did it change in the relationship, of course it changed in my entire household. Right. Simply by him choosing a different story. We have the power to create in stories, not just that we tell, but that we buy into, that we choose. We really are magicians of our lives, and the magicians that are us have the capacity to magically create and recreate anything that we want. So there's probably people listening, Maisie, thinking, well, I don't know if I tell myself how do I know if I'm telling myself a story? And it's easy. It's all a story. It's all a story. Now, stories are not bad. You and I know this. Stories are not bad. In fact, we need stories in order to construct our lives. If we didn't have a story, we wouldn't have a life. You go to see a play, you go watch a movie. There's a storyline. If you don't have a story, there's no play, there's no movie, there's no life. So stories are good. Now, the part that becomes not so good is when we create and feed into stories that don't make us feel good or don't serve our highest good or don't serve our evolution. Maisie, it's interesting because years ago, I lost my favorite pink sweater, and I had searched all over the house for it, and I looked everywhere, including in the dog's stash of stolen items, and I even started to wonder at one point if it even existed. And so finally, after hours and hours of not finding it, I just gave up. I just gave up. Of course, days later, I found it buried in the bottom of the laundry basket under all the dirty, dirty laundry. And it wasn't a sweater that I would necessarily put in the laundry. It was more of a dry cleaning sweater, so of course I didn't look there. Well, it was really interesting because, once I gave it the search, of course, I found it. And it also made me realize that, so many of us we're looking for this joy in life. We're looking for peace. We're looking for joy. And it occurred to me that maybe quite possibly that this joy and peace that we're looking for is also buried beneath our dirty laundry, waiting for us to patiently uncover it. And as I thought about this longer, I began to realize that our dirty laundry is actually our disappointment, the disappointment of our expectations, our jealousy, the competition we go through, our anger, regret, guilt, anxiety, fear. And every time we tell ourselves a story or make up a meaning that leaves us feeling disappointed, jealous, angry, anxious, or fearful, we're actually adding another piece of dirty laundry, ultimately covering up our intrinsic joy. And it's interesting because most of the dirty laundry we create occurs in the search for finding what we're looking for in the world rather than within ourselves. So, we think that certain things are going to change our lives, that we're on the search for, money or fame or, the perfect relationship or whatever it might be. And in searching for those things outside of ourselves and searching for our joy and our peace and our happiness outside of ourselves, we actually create all these things in our lives that don't work, because when we're looking for something outside of ourselves, we're also sorting for what's not working. And this creates more of that disappointment. This creates more of that, anger or fear, and keeps burdening us until that joy that's intrinsically within us is so buried deep in that dirty laundry hamper that we can't even find it. And so when we think of it in terms of this, when we're looking to create joy, when we're looking to create peace, which is what I think most people are really looking for, despite how their lives may appear, when we're looking for these things, that we can begin to understand that it's not about, putting more things on and adding more, but really it's about unburdening ourselves from all the things that we thought would make us happy, and unburdening ourselves from all the things that we think we need to have in order to be okay. And earlier, Maisie, I heard you talk about there were sort of conditions that you had on your worthiness, and we see this all over. We see that people attach worthiness to joy, that in order to feel joy and peaceful, I have to be worthy. But in order to feel worthy, I have to meet all these conditions. I have to look like this. I have to do this. I have to be this. And those conditions, you and I both know, are not realistic. There's no way that we could always measure up to those conditions. And even if we do, even if we keep ourselves running and meet all those conditions, guess what? There's always going to be more. So this means that we never really experience ourselves as worthy. And if we can't experience ourselves as worthy, and our joy and peace is contingent on worthiness, this also means we'll never experience joy and peace.
Right. And I think a lot of people can be relating to that right now, especially with the economy doing what it has done. I mean, they sit there and think, oh my gosh, why me? Why did I lose my job? Why am I stuck here at this job that I hate just because I'm so afraid that I'm not going to get a new job? Whereas you talk about problems with a purpose. When somebody loses a job, oftentimes that helps them get back on their purpose, because they would never have left that job. So here they've been given an opportunity to, hey, go out there now. You have to go and create this passion of yours that you were too fearful to do because you felt you needed to stay at that job. Right. So there is purpose in these perceived challenges that life presents us. I mean, I would say over this past year, my husband and I, up until the past economic situation, we made a lot of money. My husband traveled all over the world. We had, more business than we could keep up with. And then the economy hit, and it pretty much brought everything to a halt. And instead of being fearful, my husband and I are like, cool, we finally have time to go and put this software thing together that we never would have been able to do had we not been given this time. And so we never went into this economic situation with fear. We actually saw it as an opportunity, and now we're positioned better than we've ever been before.
Yes.
But had things kept going the way that they were going, my husband was pleased about the success of the company, but he missed his family terribly, and he missed me terribly. And he's like, something has to change because I'm missing out on my life. And so over the past year, have we not taken the trips that we usually take and stay in the places No, we've stayed closer to home. We're playing tennis as family. We're out riding bikes. We're happier than we've ever been. And so we don't view situations as a challenge anymore. We see them as an opportunity. And so we've changed that perception where it could have very much been oh my gosh, why us? Why now? Oh no, what do we do now? No. You change your perception, your story changes. Absolutely. Most people on the outside would go, oh my gosh, I can't believe what you guys have had to deal with. And it's like, hey, and we're calmer than we've ever been. It's really been something. Yeah,
the universe really is conspiring on our behalf. I see it as this interconnected weave of divine manipulation, shall we say, where everything is working together, that everything that happens in our lives, all the things that we would call problems or challenges, are actually conspiring on our behalf to lead us to a better and better life. But it's our opportunity and our choice of what to do with that. And a lot of people, have these challenges come to them, oh no, and they get crushed underneath them. Other people like you and like me and many other people in this world say, okay, well, what can we do now? What's the opportunity? And it's funny that you mentioned, business, because I had a similar experience. As you know, I have a publishing company, and, I've had it for many, many years. And the last year with the economy, yes, we saw definitely a down rise. And instead of saying, oh no, what are we going to do? We said, well, okay, what is it that we can really offer? What is it that our authors really need? And as a result, came up with a whole new concept in publishing that has made publishing really, really affordable and able to help authors worldwide. So it didn't just affect us. So our challenge we actually used to create something better for the world to help people get their messages out there. And I've seen this time and time again. There's no end to it. There's no end to how problems create opportunities. As you know, when I was 16, I was in an abusive relationship, and I survived it. I got out, and I could have kept calling myself, I'm a survivor. I'm somebody who, had to go through all this. Oh, poor me. But instead, I tried to find meaning, and as a result, I started working for a crisis center years later, and I started, counseling people who were in abusive relationships, and I started to empowering them, and as a result, it led me to my path. So I look back, and not only, it's beyond forgiveness of anything that happened. I'm absolutely grateful to this person that I was involved with in this relationship because it helped set the stage for my life. I have complete and absolute gratitude. And I really think that when we rise above a situation and we look at things from a spiritual perspective, we even begin to see spiritual contracts or spiritual agreements where we help each other. We help each other to have certain experiences so that we can fulfill our purpose. It's like Neil Donald Walsh, Little Soul and the Sun. You know that story, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be so mean to you when you go down there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, so for those listeners who have never heard this story, because I've told it a few times on Chai. It goes like this. So once upon a time, today I'm telling stories, I guess. Once upon a time, I love telling stories. There was a little boy soul, and I don't know if little souls are little boys or little girls, but in this case, it was a little boy, and he was up in heaven with God and talking to God one day, and he said to God, I want to learn about everything. And God said, that is a wonderful thing, little soul. And God said, what do you want to learn about first? And the little boy soul thought, and he said, I want to learn about forgiveness. And God said, that is a great thing to learn about. but you're going to need someone to forgive. Well, the little boy's soul got very sad because he had no one to forgive. Well, just then a little girl's soul popped up, and she said, I can help you. And he said, you can? And she said, yes. He said, how can you help me? And she said, well, we can go down there to that planet called Earth and forget we know each other and one day meet, and I'm going to do something so terrible to you that you'll have an opportunity to forgive me. And the little boy's soul looked at her and said, you would do that for me? Why would you do such a great and generous thing for me? And she looked at him and she said, because I love you. And she said, but you're going to have to do something for me. And he said, anything. I'll do anything for you. And she said, well, in order to do this terrible thing to you, I'm going to have to forget who I am. So you're going to have to remember not only who I am, but who you are. And he said, I can do that. I can do that. And I really believe that this is what happens on these deeper levels, that when we really look deep, we see that when these terrible things happen to us, or in this case, when somebody does something terrible to us, it's because they are fulfilling an agreement we have with them. And this awful thing that seemed like it was done from, hate and fear was really done from love. And in fact, when we look deep enough at anything, what we see is love, that everything comes from love. And with this understanding, even the worst of stories becomes a positive, empowering story. And
right.
It's beautiful.
Oh, it is beautiful. At the end of your life, when you're all standing up on the stage together, all the people who've been in your life, and you're all taking a bow together, you're going to look at someone up there who challenged you and then made you realize that you don't want to repeat that again, or that they made you take a look at something else in your life. And had they not shown up, and had they not had that contract with you, it would not have been revealed in that way. And so and so when people in our business come and they're, oh my gosh, they're just being absolutely stinky. And I'm like, okay, I'm middle night and I'm working on something and I'll remember what that person said or what that person did. It's like this fuel to, okay, I'm going to get this going. Because I don't want to repeat that again. I mean, it's like they did their job. They got, okay, I got the message. Yes. So I'm not holding it against them. I'm working off of the energy that I now feel from that interaction, but it has nothing to do with them anymore. It's mine. I've taken it on.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. A lot of what happens in relationships is that we believe somebody did something to us, and by blaming that person, we're actually giving our power to them, and by giving our power to them, we're actually the energy to them. There's an actual energy that connects with them and stops us from moving forward in our life. So every time we blame someone else or blame a situation or feel like a victim, we're actually giving some of our energy over to that very thing or that person, and it stops us. It stops us. And this is not really what we want in order to create the lives that we really want to create. Yeah. Maisie, we only have a few minutes left. Do you believe it?
Oh, okay.
That went so fast. I would love...
So go ahead.
I would love for you to share some last words of wisdom with our listeners, and also, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Oh, all right. Well, my biggest words of wisdom is that you really do have the power to make a choice. So it has absolutely nothing to do with your circumstance. If you view it differently, then you see how you have the power within the situation. Don't succumb to them. You get to make the choice yourself and how you want your story to play out. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, feel free to contact me at the Lumi Company, info, I-N-F-O, at the Lumi Company, all spelled out.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maisie. Thank you for sharing your story and your energy and your light. I'm sure that our listeners can feel it right through their computer or their radio or however they're listening.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. For a wonderful night. Thank you, sweetheart. Yeah. We are creating stories. This is how we create our lives. Our storytelling creates our reality, and our stories define us. But who defines our stories? Of course, it is us who defines our stories. I remember once being told of two young men, and they were completely opposite of each other. One of them was just like their father, and the other was just the opposite of their father. Their father was not a very nice man. He was in prison for, and he had killed people and raped people, and he was a thief, and, he did just about everything that, is not the most desirable things to do. Well, one son became just like him, and the other son became completely opposite of him. And they interviewed these two sons, and they asked them both the same question. That was, why do you think you are the way you are? So they went to the first son, who was just like the father, and they said, why do you think you are the way you are? And the son said, with a father like that, how could I have been any other way? And they went to the second son, who was completely opposite and had a wonderful life and a wonderful family and a wonderful career and was very happy. And they asked him, why do you think you are the way you are? And he said, with a father like that, how could I have been any other way? It's our choice. It's our choice. We are constantly making judgments and discernments about the things that happen in our life. And just by changing that story, just by changing our judgment, just by changing our discernment, we get to change our lives and create something completely different. It supports us to create and feed into stories that support us. And there's always more than one interpretation of a story. Healing is simply a reinterpretation of the past, that when we look back on the past and we see a different story, or we understand a different story, suddenly things change. And this could mean that we actually get new information, or this could mean that we actually create new information that supports us. Is this making it up? Well, we're making things up anyway. Who's to say what's really true? Let's focus on those things that make us powerful, that make us rich, that make us abundant, that make us be the creators of the lives we really, really want. It's interesting because the mind has the need to make sense out of everything. This is how we survive, and this starts from the time that we are very, very young. My new grandson, he's 3 months old, and I already can see him making decisions about the world. Is it safe? Is it not safe? Am I loved? Am I not loved? Once we make these decisions about the world, by the time we're 5 years old, our lives are molded, and we spend the rest of our lives looking for information that supports those choices, those decisions. So someone who makes a decision that life is not safe or they're not lovable might spend the rest of their life proving that that's true. But it's not necessarily true. When we become conscious and wake up, as in right now and today, then we get to make different choices. Then we get to go back and actually change those stories that we once told ourselves. So, maybe life really isn't unsafe. Maybe life really is safe. Maybe you're really not unlovable. Maybe you're really lovable. Maybe you don't need to prove your worth anymore. Maybe you're worthwhile. Maybe you're worth it. Maybe you are full of worth, and you always have been. Which is a more empowering story? To be worthy or to be worthless? I'll let you decide that. Recently I saw the movie Alice in Wonderland, and Alice met a character called Absolute. And towards the end of the movie, Alice had to decide if she really would be the Alice in Wonderland and fight the mighty enemy. And she was having problems, choosing if she was going to do this or not. And she went to Absolute, and Absolute, in his absolute wisdom, said to her, how can you decide when you don't even remember who you are? And this is true. How can you decide when you don't remember who you are? And so in this way, it becomes essential that in order for you to decide and create stories about your life that support who you really are, you must remember who you really are. You must remember who you really are. And locked away in remembering who you really are is who you are. That we all have an essence, that we all have the knowing deep inside of ourselves, and it just means that we look deep enough that we find ourselves. And how do we find ourselves? We find ourselves by breaking through, unleashing all the layers of our stories until we come to this place where we truly are worthy, that we truly are the beautiful divine power that we have been praying to. You have the power, you have the choice. From today on, I invite you to create stories that feed your soul and feed your life and help you to create the most wonderful, powerful, extraordinary life. Please visit me at my website at nanice.com. That's NANICE.com for tons of free articles, song downloads, book downloads. All my shows are archived there, and it is just a feast for your eyes and your ears and every other sense in manifesting. And don't forget to take the pledge. It will change your life. It will change the world. And remember, till next week, take care of yourself. Really good care of yourself. And I love you. You've been listening to Chai with Nanice. I'm Nanice. Bye for now.
Thank you for having Chai with Nanice. Please go to www.nanice.com for great free stuff that will empower you to live your best possible life. Free books, articles, shows, meditation audios, and so much more at nanice.com. That's NANICE.com. Nanice's books are also available in all major bookstores and Amazon. Check out The Infinite Power of You, Even Gandhi Got Hungry and Buddha Got Mad, Zest Point, Lip Prints, and many others by Nanice Ellis. To find out about one-on-one coaching and how Nanice can personally coach you to experience your best life possible, please email mybestlife@nanice.com.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And please join me on my website at nanice.com. That's NANICE.com. Thank you.